Hello, friends. We can get started and more people can join us as we go along, I suppose. First of all, I hope you're all right. I can't really talk to you directly, which is a little bit strange, but I hope you're all doing well and thank you for joining us today. We have got a jam-packed session with an interview with the wonderful Sarah Sutton from Oatly. We've got an introduction to our newest product, Track, and we're going to unveil the inaugural Track 50, which is our list of the newest, of the most culturally resonant brands as defined by their cultural equity score. And after all that, if you've still got energy, we'll take some questions from you all too. So get your questions at the ready. I'm really excited about watching Sarah squirm as we go through some of those questions. And I wanted to start with a huge thank you for all of the lovely messages. For as many of you know, last week was CultureLab's first birthday. And in our first year, we've been pretty busy. We've launched 3 products, the third of which is launching today, so I can definitely say that. We delivered projects for some of the world's most culturally resonant brands, seven of which are on the Track 50, and built a diverse team of 15 of what I would describe as the greatest cultural researchers and strats on the planet. Oh, and if we weren't busy enough, we launched a magazine as well. So it has been pretty busy, but it's also been brilliant. Before we get into speaking with Sarah, before I talk to you about Track and the Track 50 and we get to your questions, I wanted to share a little bit about what led us to start CultureLab in the first place. Because there's 2 stories. There is an official story, which some of you may have heard before, and there is an unofficial, unedited, probably more candid version of the story. So today I'm going to share the unedited, candid version. So be kind with me. So some of you may know, but I grew up in Derbyshire, in a place called Alfreton. It's an ex-mining town in the Midlands. It's a place famous for its high crime rate, high unemployment. But the silver lining is that it's also the birthplace of Thornton's chocolatier. So every cloud, right? And growing up, I was a really weird kid. I was the kid that cut my own hair, made my own t-shirts, and saved my paper round money to buy Detroit techno records. I was odd. I was definitely not like other kids. And in honesty, without getting too deep, it was pretty isolating. And when I was about 13, found WH Smith's. Now, for those of you that didn't grow up in the UK, WH Smith's is a newsagent, it is a magazine store. And just as I was starting to feel totally lost, I found myself on the magazine racks of WH Smith's. And I found myself through magazines like Mixmag and IDJ and Ministry and Days and ID. I just found people who shared my values. I found people who were excited about the same stuff, about the same rituals as me, the same icons, the same ideas. I found my people. And after a long time feeling really isolated, culture rescued me and gave me a space to belong and like a community to be part of. So the short story is that I spent my career, I suppose, explaining how culture works to brands. But the real story is that since I was old enough to work, I've been trying to repay my debt to culture by finding ways to help companies invest in it and give people like me a space to belong so that stuff continues for a long time. Now, as I got into the industry as a junior planner and strategist, I realized that most people and companies don't really talk about people in a normal way. They've got segment names and they talk about consumers and audiences and all of that sort of gruesome chat. And I didn't realize, but we were supposed to divide these people up by their age, their income, and their postcodes. And we were expected to treat people like rational, self-interested individuals. Basically taught that the way that the economists look at the world is how we should look at the world. I'm not sure if any of you've checked the track record for economists recently, but it's not looking that good. And as a pretty petulant junior, I just refused all this. One, I wasn't really trained for anything. I was like an English lit grad, so I didn't really know what I was doing anyway. But 2, I just thought anthropologists had got a far better grasp of how to understand humans. They know how people behave. They know that people behave irrationally, that we're genetically hardwired to find spaces and communities in which we want to belong. They know that we might buy something as an individual, but that we've chosen it as part of a group. And I knew that those groups and communities, those genuine influences, were formed out of popular culture. So I basically built a career on explaining those groups and communities to different marketeers and brands. And I was really lucky and fortunate to work with some of the world's most exciting brands on the way and talk to them about how they could play a more additive role in culture. However, on that process and over the last, I was going to say 20 years, but that makes me sound really old. Over the last 5 years, no, it is over the last 20 years, I found 2 things massively frustrating. The first is that the industry refused to switch from this economist mindset, and it still does have this, it was obsessed with chasing like ephemeral trends. Like whether it was the cutesy and demure, whether it was the whatever it was, like there was always something new to go chasing after. And there still is. And the second thing that I always found frustrating was there were just no tools or products that helped properly analyze and quantify popular culture. And like, despite living in this like golden age of data, understanding and harnessing the power of popular culture still felt like magic. So 2 years ago, when I first started talking to Anthony Friedman, who's the founder and CEO of Common Interest, it was these two frustrations that we decided to address. And today, CultureLab, 1 year old, is a cultural intelligence platform that analyzes more than 1.8 billion cultural data points every single day. We see everything that's published on the public internet effectively. We combine best-in-class AI technology and human analysis to understand and quantify global popular culture. We've effectively codified the way that some of the best cultural marketeers like Sarah look at the world. And our plan really is to change the industry by showing that there's a better way. And in doing so, and we plan to do so with some of the best brands in the world. That platform is the basis for 3 products that we built. One is called Discover, one is called Track, and one's called Navigate. We've been working with a select group of culturally forward-thinking brands and marketeers with Navigate. That's our consultancy project, so people like Oatly. And that remains closed off to a lot of brands and all agencies. But today we are launching the magazine, which is fueled by Track and by Discover. And Discover's our editorial product. The magazine's called CultureWORKS. If you'd like a copy, just DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email at jed@culturelab.co and we can send you one. And we're also launching a brand new product today called Track, which is open to everybody. But before I give any more away about Track, I'd like to introduce, now I've rambled on for 10 whole minutes, a special guest, a special partner to CultureLab's journey so far, and definitely a really integral part of our future too. Please give, on your own, in your front rooms and in your offices, a warm welcome to Sarah Sutton, Oatly's Global Media and Brand Partnerships Director. Yeah, and a true partner to CultureLab as well. I'll give you a little intro, Sarah, and I get a little warm-up time. So for more than 2 decades, Sarah's worked with some of the world's most loved and most culturally resonant brands, from Nike to Marks & Spencer to Volvo. She's worked at agencies like 72 and Sunny, and Mindshare, which is part of WPP. She's also a regular juror at Cannes. We were just talking about Festival of Media too. And she can often be found giving inspiring keynotes on the future of culture marketing, creativity, and technology. And now, as a senior leader at Oatly, one of the biggest runaway success stories of culture marketing of the 2020s, Sarah is creating the work that so often I myself, and I presume a lot of you, are also incredibly jealous of. Welcome, Sarah. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks, Jed. I'm good. Nervous after that incredible intro.
I'm just speaking the truth. I'm just speaking the truth. Should we jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
How would you describe Oatly's approach to culture marketing, and how does your role fit in with that?
I think we just always check ourselves. So when we're thinking about culture marketing, it's like as simple as, do we have something to say here? And if so, can we say it in a wildly unconventional way? It's really that simple. We feel that a lot of companies just talk. We need to comment on this trend. We need to take a stance on every issue. We need to be in the Super Bowl. We need to be at this event or that event, etc., etc. And I think there are a lot of brands that talk in legally approved, staid, watered down language. And we really try our best to avoid a lot of that, like really try and keep that kind of human narrative and human like craft aspect at the heart of everything that we do. And I think that ultimately comes from the fact that we're a group of ex-agency creatives where we're just vowing not to become one of those companies, you know, that the economists, as you were saying before, economists. Why did I say economists? I mean, that's
I think I did it twice as well.
God. You know, that said, we can't afford to ignore the culture. We can't afford to ignore those specific trends. And we certainly don't want to ignore them all, but we also don't want to jump on that bandwagon. We do, of course, want to find that magic so that we can somehow find either one of those niche subcultures and jump on it when it's quite early so that we can potentially be part of something that is leading the way. I mean, don't all brands want this? So yeah, I mean, ultimately, we determine whether we've got something interesting to say. We do that by working alongside like our community management team. We also have this incredible team of barista market developers. You know, these are some of the coolest, most influential people on the ground. You know, they know all of the cool coffee places, all of the cool drink places, all of the mixologists. They're super nerdy but super cool at the same time. You know, if you want to know, or we want to know what's happening in food, drink, coffee culture across the world, chances are we've probably got a barista who can take you on that deep dive. You know, they can take you on a cultural tour of what's hot, what's next, what's chuggy. And then we also have our friends at CultureLab, who are helping us, you know, kind of map out the subcultures within the subcultures to help us find that next fringe of something. So we can hopefully then determine where we take beverage culture next.
Amazing. Thank you for the little hat tip as well. Wasn't expecting that. That's lovely. There was something you said when we first started talking last year. There was something that you said around, I know I get this line wrong every single time, but this idea of like being predictably unpredictable or unpredictably, I can never remember which way around it is. I think I got the words wrong as well. But I remember at the time just being totally struck by the idea that like an organization, this sort of the level of success and fame of Oatly, just having such an intentional approach in not turning up in the same places as everybody else and not doing things consistently, and like almost making a virtue of Oatly not having a consistent way of appearing in culture.
And that, I mean, that you've got the term right there. It's consistently inconsistent. It was, you know, for quite a long period of time. It was kind of our one focus or one North Star to how we approached content and content creation, especially, you know, when it came to like our social feed. So we just had to make sure that we were always taking people by the element of surprise. I suppose another rule of thumb was like, don't bore the shit out of people. And how do you do that? You know, if you lay out your strategy and everything is like locked and loaded, then you do start to become expected. So our whole kind of mantra was like, don't be expected, don't be boring. So be consistently inconsistent. And that, I mean, it still exists to a certain degree within the work, but I think, you know, we've spent some time growing up, we're maturing as an organization, we're maturing as a brand. And what comes with that, obviously, is a little bit more rigor around the way in which we do things. But I think we'll always have an element of inconsistency in our work because it's fundamental to who we are as a brand.
So is there, like, compared to places you worked before, because you've got like such an envious CV in terms of brands you work with, and they all, like, the thing that strings them all together is they've all got this sort of strong, powerful sense of like cultural resonance. What would you say you do differently at Oatly versus those places, and what would you say is kind of similar?
We don't have a traditional marketing department. We don't even have a CMO at Oatly. What we do have is the ODMC, which is short for the Oatly Department of Mind Control. So the ODMC is an in-house department of creators, makers, discipline specialists. We all have ideas, and we have created a foundation within the ODMC where we all have the opportunity to bring these ideas to the table. And I think where we're fundamentally very different to other organizations is our ECDs all work really closely with the general managers of each local market. And that's to ensure that we have a seamless approach to like business strategy and creative alignment. And it means we can get to kind of ideas quicker as well, because ideas are developed with specific markets in mind. And I think when we focus on work in that way, where it kind of comes from a local market need, but then we realize it can transcend multiple markets with a local nuance added through things like events and specific media content, we can get to things just a lot faster. And I think we do move quicker than a lot of the places that I've worked at before. It's like coming from a strategy background, I pretty much spent 20 years of my career building the most beautiful, or what I thought were the most beautiful, I'm sure some art directors would disagree, but, you know, beautiful pitch presentations for clients featuring slides and slides of audience work, brand, media strategy. And there'd be several rounds of that, you know, and you'd go to bed and you'd get up and someone on another time zone would come in and tweak your deck. Like, we obsessed over the decks, right? And I think that is something that we don't spend too much time obsessing on at Oatly. Like, yes, there are decks. Yes, they are beautiful, but they're fast and they're iterative, and we're not slave to that deck. You know, they're just there as a guide. It's a playbook. Get it locked in and just get moving. And it's all about how good we can, or how quick we can get really good work out there.
The speed thing, it definitely felt like it typified a lot of your early like marketing activities, certainly like through the sort of early part of that 10-year absolute sort of like wave. How much has that changed as you've gone from being like super challenger brand to effectively leading the category?
I think there was a lot of light touch in the early days, like, and again, it's when you have something like consistently inconsistent as your North Star, it basically means you can do anything you want. So that meant things could be really quick. But I think when it comes to, you know, where we're at now, we still like to think of ourselves as that same irreverent, quirky brand that we set out to be. But invariably, we've had to grow up. You know, we had to grow up the minute we became a stakeholder organization. Like many companies, we've experienced internal changes and challenges that come with operating as a public company. But we've still got this tried and tested approach to creativity, which is to remove everything that gets in the way of creating and executing great work. We try and keep our focus, you know, on that, because often the biggest threat to the brand is ourselves. If we start to put too many processes in place, if we start to, you know, put too many approval practices in place, then chances are we're going to start to stifle some of that creativity. We focus on getting the brilliant ideas out and executing them, and not the process. It hasn't been without, you know, bumps in the road or obstacles, but we've worked really hard to, you know, as we've grown, as the team's grown, as the department has grown, as the company has grown, to obviously maintain some of that kind of light fluidity and flexibility in the organization, which anyone will know, having experienced it, is difficult, because when you add more people into the mix, you do start to require some process and some good practice, but you've just got to buckle up and get through it, I suppose.
Well, it seems to be working as well, like with the gigs work, like for all the talk of like, you know, behaving like a big proper organization and like having new stakeholders, all of that sort of stuff. Like gigs work was absolutely rapid. And I think it would be remiss if, like, I still like the gigs work is, I think, probably some of my favorite. I do really love blind taste tests, but the gigs stuff is just, yeah, it's just pitch perfect. I'd love you to tell everybody like how it came about and what it was. That would be great.
I love talking about this because it is incredible, but equally I'm not uncomfortable talking about it. I'm never uncomfortable talking, but I don't want to ever assume any credit at all for this work. So I will give props to our team. But before I get to that, essentially, you know, Gigs literally slid into our DMs. He messaged us on Instagram. He wanted to chat about our vanilla custard. Yes, we make vanilla custard, people. It's not available everywhere, but check the website and you'll find it. So of course, you know, we invited him into our office to chat. I think he actually invited himself, actually. I think he just said, I'm in town, I'll pop in. I remember the buzz that day, like Teams chat was live. Even from my desk here in Amsterdam, the excitement coming from the team in London was just so infectious. Because whilst this was incredibly new and different for Oatly, Gigs was making it so easy and so normal for us, because there was just like a genuine appetite from him to want to work with us. So, you know, in terms of props for the team, we got like Erica, our UK brand project manager. She was the one that kind of started the conversation with him. And then we had like our global content studio kind of come in and start talking to him about ideas. And, you know, it was just a fantastic experience from the off. And I think the reason for that was because Gigs just loves our custard. Like, he sat in that meeting room and he talked at great length about how much he loved it, about all the different desserts he had it with, and how he felt really strongly about raising awareness of the product and increasing its availability. And the reason for that is because Gigs and his young son are both lactose intolerant. So they struggle to enjoy their favorite foods together, and desserts in particular. So, you know, this just became a real gift from Gigs, because we'd got, you know, this guy who is a, you know, culture icon, stalwart in the UK, icon in the UK in particular, who loved a product of ours because he had a real need for it, and wanted to kind of share that love for a product and help people understand that they could enjoy these things if they had, lactose intolerance. 70 to 80% of the world's population are lactose intolerant. And the percentage of intolerance is even higher in Black and brown communities. So we have specific UK research that shows that Black, Asian and other minorities are more than twice as likely to be lactose intolerant compared to white groups. And almost 70% have said that they miss out on desserts and food experience as a result to find alternatives in store and in restaurants and stuff. So, gigs felt really strongly about it. We'd always thought, how do we talk about lactose intolerance, like in an interesting and an engaging way? And as much as the work didn't really cover off on that, we still were able to get the story out off the back of it.
Sarah, thank you so much. After all these years, every time we chat, I still learn something new every time we speak. Sometimes it's gossip, sometimes it's work related. We are absolutely not done with you yet, but before we do our best Statler and Waldorf impression on the Track 50, first, I think I probably need to introduce Track. And as I mentioned at the start, Track is a SaaS product. It's built on a platform that quantifies your brand's impact on culture and vice versa. We've been using a beta version of this product with a few different partners since January, really. And already the results and impact have been really good. And we've had 2 partners already use it for quantifying their impact at the Super Bowl. 2 partners that happen to have 2 of the most talked about Super Bowl moments this year, as well as partners incorporating it into their global brand tracking and measurement programs, as well as brands using it to track campaigns and competitors, but also some really interesting use cases around brands using it to track talent and trends and ambassadors and athletes too. So that's how it's been used, but rather than just talk at you and tell you how it all works, I'd rather than just tell you, I thought we could show you instead. So I thought I'd give you a little demo. So this is Track. You access Track via our website where you can log in once you're set up as a subscriber. Once you're in, you'll be presented with an at-a-glance view of 5 key areas of culture that Track currently analyzes. These are cultural breadth, how's your brand driving cultural impact across the 12 areas of culture that we track. Cultural depth, how deeply embedded is your brand in a given area of culture. Heat, how hot is your brand? What's the energy like? Share of culture, how's your brand showing up versus competitors and what's its share of culture? And finally, cultural equity, which is our proprietary metric that takes the results of those previous data points and turns them into a single trackable metric. So let's dive in. So as you tap into breadth, you'll see which areas of culture your brand is currently having an impact in. This is all quantified with real-time data and updated live. The nav bar at the bottom will give you the ability to change your period of time you're analyzing, and you can switch between absolutes and proportions. And below the graph it is a ranked breakdown of each of the 12 areas of popular culture too. Swipe menu at the top, you can start to switch between looking at how competitors are showing across broad popular culture too. So you get to really dig into like how the competition are doing. If you've got campaigns in here, you can look at how different campaigns are showing up too. Within depth, this is how your brand is driving impact in a specific area. In this last example, we're looking at Alpro and food culture. Similar graphs, similar analysis tools to breadth, but this section is all about analysing a deeper level in culture. So this is about looking within food and then within food, the different depths of there. Within heat, this section helps us understand how your brand impact changes over time. We can break this down by month, by week, or by day. Separates the type of heat too, so breaking apart platforms, publishers, and people with high impact versus those with a lower impact. And what we're really hoping to see here is as much heat from as many high cultural impact platforms as possible. The greater the heat, the more influential your brand is on popular culture. And we also give a rank breakdown of the charts too and the places that are driving that. Next up is share of culture. Nice, pretty self-explanatory. It's a visualization tool to analyze how your brand stacks up in its impact on popular culture versus a given set of competitors. You can amend the set using the drop-down menu. You can also edit the time period you want to analyze, as well as switching between absolutes and proportions too. It's all pretty straightforward, but all super compelling insights. So it's starting to quantify your performance against the competition. And finally is our proprietary metric for tracking your brand's impact on popular culture, cultural equity score. This single metric takes all of the data that we've seen in the previous 4 sections and gives them each a specific weighting based on their importance and combines them to give an index score out of 100. Again, you can analyze data over different time windows, as well as looking at the cultural equity of competitors too. And what we're really hoping to see here from a brand perspective is two things. The first is like spikes in score when marketing or product activities live. And the second, really, probably the most important, I'd say, is like long-term upward trends in overall cultural equity. We're also currently in beta testing with two different partners to integrate this data with search and sales data too, and the results so far have been super promising. We can see that there's definitely a relationship between these things. There'll be loads more to come on that, but for now, we're really excited to be introducing this single metric for tracking your brand's performance in popular culture. And what's more, this is super important. I'd be so happy to share the breakdown of the methodology too. Like, I think partnerships built on honesty. And so the transparency of the approach is super important to us. The sources of data, the way that we calibrate it, the sort of the weighting of each of those things is really important. But today we are very excited to publicly launch Track, and we'd love to talk to you about becoming a subscriber. Alongside Track being available for subscriptions today, we're also using it to power the Track 50. So that's a public facing list, the world's most culturally resonant brands as defined by their cultural equity score over a 2-month window. We're planning to update and release this list twice a year. It'll be released in our free magazine, if I have not given this enough of a plug as it has. And the first edition of the mag is out today. Alongside the Track 50, there's also Discover Trend pieces in there from the last 6 months. There's columns from incredible thought leaders like people like James Denman, and there's interviews with some of the world's best cultural marketeers like Sarah. Shall we give you a sneak preview of the Track 50? Drum roll, please. So, as you can see, this is 50 of the most culturally resonant brands in the world as judged by their cultural equity score. There are some familiar faces, undoubtedly. There's some unexpected omissions, and there are definitely some breakouts in here too. Sarah, shall we have a little dive into what's going on and why it's happening, where people have landed more specifically? Is there anything jumping out here for you?
Well, I mean, should we talk about number one? Netflix.
Yes, let's do number one. Do you know what? Actually, Netflix is one of the ones that I think is most interesting, because we track the data through January and February. So this does not include adolescents, importantly. But 60 million households tuned in to watch that Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. I was going to call it a fight. I'm not sure it was a fight. More of a sort of, it felt
the actual throwdown.
Yeah, just such a peculiar thing. But I hadn't clocked that 60 million people tuning into that is about the same as the amount of people that tune into adolescents. To have two things of that scale in a 6-month window is massive. And they've also been doing loads with WWE. I wasn't a big wrestling fan when I was a kid, but I know lots of people that were. They've got loads of historic pay-per-view stuff, and there's loads of new anime content on there again. Be interesting to see if it can keep hold of its top spot.
It'll be, super interesting. I can't see it going, I can't see it going way down if it moves off the top spot. I think what Netflix are really starting to excel at is creating content that people love to binge. Not only that they're, it feels like they're starting to create content for multi-screeners, which feels like a really old-fashioned statement to say, but it's things that you can watch while you're scrolling, cooking, doing whatever else it is while you're sitting and lounging and relaxing. And I think that's just testament to, the way we behave today. Rarely is our attention focused on one thing. So from my point of view, they seem to have nailed the ability to kind of capture our attention whilst being attentive elsewhere too. The Jake Paul Tyson thing, I did watch it. I think I gave too much airtime to the buffering aspects of that, and did start to question why they did something so big as their launch spot. But equally, that was the strategy, right?
I think it's one thing now. I think with things like that, with the buffering thing, it's one thing to know that something's going to be successful in culture, but it's another thing to quantify it and figure out just how many people. If you look at the combined audiences of Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, one a YouTube demigod effectively, I suppose, and the other one of the most famous athletes of all time, it was always going to be pretty punchy, not literally, well, I suppose literally and metaphorically. But to quantify that and then to still have buffering issues is yeah, kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Celine jumps out on here for me, but I suppose when you've got the, and more just because of how high up it is, but I suppose it'd be weird given it was during the Super Bowl that we took the data. It'd be strange if those boot cuts didn't turn up, wouldn't it? Costco was another one that I thought was super, super interesting, and Aldi's on here as well. Both just seem, like I think Costco's the world's biggest members club.
I mean, they're just cults, right? Both of them. Like, I think, like, how have we ended up in a world where our supermarkets, and I mean, Costco, can you even call it a supermarket? It's a mega market. They have cult status. Like, it's insane. Costco shoppers, Aldi shoppers, like, when I was a kid, it was embarrassing to shop at Costco or Aldi, whereas now it's like it's got real cultural cash.
Yeah, do you know what Tom Armstrong, our Discover editor, was talking about? Like both Lidl and Aldi and Costco to a degree as well, being like this key part of the online tension between like high and mass culture. And this idea that like Gen Z have kind of poured into the things like stupid foods, like is a really good example of like. He tells me this all the time. I can never remember what the restaurant's called, but the restaurant in New York that's like it's just stupid food like hot dogs. Yeah. But this idea of like high culture meeting mass culture, I think, is really fascinating. Tesla as well. It feels slightly weird talking about this today based on yesterday's day of American liberation, I think it's framed up as, but it'd be weird again. I don't think there's a car brand that's elicited such strong opinions from wider culture ever.
No, I don't think we should give them much more airtime, though, to be honest, Jed.
As Tom said to me the other week, you wouldn't get that with a Ford Mondeo, and it's spot on, isn't it? Like it's so funny. PSG's the other one. I don't think I again was quite surprised to see like a football club on here, but is PSG a football club anymore? It feels like it's so much more than that.
So much more. I mean, even the play that Nike had by removing the sponsorship from Nike and switching it to Jordan, like that in and of itself was just like such a cultural shift. I think it just really plays into the whole strategy that PSG have around like transcending their category and going beyond, just football. It's like, it's a statement.
Yeah, mega. And that I think they opened a New York store as well, which is like, I think it's next door to an LVMH store. Yep. Yeah, absolutely incredible stuff. And then again, Guinness. Good old Guinness. I think everyone thinks this is because of splitting the G, but I honestly think that the reality is it's all about that 0% alcohol version because it is so good. It is like the close, like as someone that's mostly sober, like it's the closest that you get to an actual pint of Guinness.
Yeah. I mean, Guinness is just, nothing looks like it, nothing tastes like it. Most of us pretend to like it because it's a vibe, right? So I love the fact you brought up Guinness because no joke, we have a upcoming trip to Ireland in a few weeks, and we were discussing like hotels, travel accommodation, etc. And my friend's already booked the restaurants, and she's like, "I'll leave the pubs to you, Suts." And I was like, okay, what do we want, cocktails or Guinness? And obviously I expected cocktails to come back, and everyone's like, both, of course. And I'm like, you don't even like Guinness, like, but that is the cult of it. That's the vibe of what it is. And to your point, like it is possibly around the 0%. Like I did a bit of research into this, which is less than 1 in 10 pints of beer sold in the UK are stout. But despite that, Guinness 0% has become the nation's best-selling non-alcoholic beer, according to another source of information. Which you kind of go, I mean, I spoke about PSG transcending their category, but Guinness has definitely done it in a way that, is enviable to all brands.
Yeah, it also feels like Guinness, because Guinness, I was just say when I were a lad, but it is like it's always had that sort of like incredible, like you remember like things like Surfer and stuff like that. It's always had like such a prominent role, but it feels like the brand has totally transcended. It's done that leap again that so few brands do, with like moving on to the next generation and still retaining sort of like a wild level of resonance. So I'm just going to fire up the old Q&A section. What's the culturally coolest piece of brand work you've seen in the last couple of weeks, Susie?
Oh God, pressure. Culturally coolest. Oh my God. I live in Amsterdam, right? Oh, I do know. Sorry, this is going to be really, this will probably be really expected and disappointing. But Kylie Kelsey has just done a piece for Liquid Death, which is called Kegs for Pregs. So if you know the phenomenon behind the Kelseys, she is pregnant. She is having a moment. She has a podcast. She's a whole vibe in and of herself. But yeah, brilliant piece of social content created by Liquid Death, with a little song with pregnant Kylie Kelsey and her Kegs for Pregs.
Oh, wow.
Check it out. Check it out.
I don't think I've seen that. I'm going to do one that that I think is probably this. I'm not usually very neggy, but this is my worst one. Duke University in the US complaining about White Lotus. That is up there with one of the daftest moves I think I've ever seen. And I get that, like in the US, the sort of university system is more like a corporate system and it's more like brand reputation. But it is fascinating to see them kind of slamming their representation in White Lotus.
Ridiculous. Like, I mean, I would pay for a reference. like, come see me, Apple. We'll pay. Yeah, ridiculous.
Right, we should have a little look through. We're getting loads of questions through. How important is transcending a category to really be a culturally impactful brand?
Oh, I've just got goosebumps from that question. I personally think it's really important. Like, one of the things we have always said at Oatly is that we are not a food brand, which I know eye rolls from the back. You know, of course we're a food brand, but we don't want to behave like a food brand. We don't follow the norms of the category. You're just in a sea of sameness. It would just end up being about fresh, delicious, tastiness. I think we've always thought of ourselves as a lifestyle brand, and we look at other lifestyle brands to inspire us. Like, we don't look within our own category, and I think that really helps. And I think it's not about having blinkers on and not kind of keeping an eye on the competition, but it's also not like following the competition blindly as well. So yeah, look around, take inspiration from everywhere. And transcend that category, because I think it just broadens your audience reach as well.
Sweet. I mean, from my perspective, the sort of the breadth, because we talk about breadth and depth all the time, and breadth feels like one of those things that you can't really control, because if you're trying to establish like transcending your category and being across like 5, 6, 7 areas of popular culture at any given time, you could just throw so much money at it and never really achieve it. Whereas what Oatly have done amazingly well is just focus on like the depth of like food and beverage culture, and that in itself has carried you into other areas of culture by virtue of people like gigs. And I think that's if the focus is depth and the focus is meaning something to someone rather than trying to mean everything to everyone, that always feels like a big one. We have got quite a few questions in. What's your definition of culture? I get asked this question all the time, so I've got like such a canned answer for it.
Go on then, you answer it, and then I'll think about my definition.
So when we talk about popular culture, what we're talking about is like a shared set of beliefs, rituals, and icons that bond a set of people together. It's usually a community, and they're usually reflective of a different area. Like they're always part of like an area of broader popular culture. So if it's music, we'd think about within music, you could go deep and come into, I know, like UK based music, which has got a very specific culture, a set of values around it, a set of rituals that exist within it. But it's really usually, it's, you can tell more from looking at someone's haircut, the magazines they read, the books they read, the music they listen to, than you can from anything else. And so when we talk about culture, we're not talking about necessarily religion, we're not talking about geographical or racial culture, we're talking about popular culture in a way that it brings people together.
I love that. I can't beat that. That was such a cop out for me, right?
It's never happened. We've got another couple of questions in here. So there is one from an anonymous attendee. What do you think will be this year's biggest challenge in cultural marketing?
The biggest challenges in marketing at the moment. So if I take it from like that top approach first, I think the biggest challenge we're all facing in marketing at the moment is misinformation and disinformation. And I think just culturally we're in a space and place where people no longer have trust in institutions, in government, in politics. There's not even trust in science anymore. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have as marketeers and as brands in particular is like how we're really establishing trust. So I think for me, what we have to do within kind of our cultural play is make sure that we are, continuing to build that trust through culture as well. So for me, there's some basics there, which is never stealing credit, always giving credit, like working with people that are part of that culture or that subculture that you're trying to tap into. Because I think, again, a lot of brands can be guilty of kind of stealing or wading into specific niche areas and not actually working alongside people. Like, there's no way we would have gone into kind of the London rap scene without someone like Giggs. I mean, imagine the way that would have played out. So I think stay close to the culture, but work with the people that can help you build trust and community within that culture.
Yeah, there's another great question in. Hi, Sarah and Jed. This question for Sarah. As a South Londoner, it was great to see what Oatly did with gigs, as we talked about earlier. But I'm interested to see what Oatly is going to be doing in sports. Seeing the work with cyclists, but would there be more investment here or unique partnerships? And I think that talks to the same thing, right?
Yeah, it does actually. And yeah, thank you for that question. Any opportunity to talk about our sponsorship with EF Pro Cycling is a good one. So yeah, we are sponsors of EF Pro Cycling, and if anyone is into cycling, you'll know that they're kind of often seen as a bit of an underdog team. They don't take themselves too seriously, which you can imagine a lot of pro athletes do because they have to. They're incredibly fun. They're a vibrant team. They make awesome content, which is why we thought they were a good partner for us. But also, just coming back to that point around building trust, like, one of the issues we have is around misinformation around our kind of product ingredients and health and nutrition. So working with these athletes, we're able to build and strengthen our kind of health and nutrition credentials through that partnership.
There are a bunch of questions in here that are quite technical, specific questions about track, which I promise you all I will come back to you and answer. I'll come back to you separately and answer. But there is one that I think is a question for both of us. Do you think in the current climate we need almost new metrics versus the traditional engagement to really understand the success of a campaign or the penetration of a brand in culture? Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Yeah, I give you the so good. It's a funny one, and it's something that we talk about a lot. I think part of the challenge here is that like marketing's very good at coming up with new metrics that when we've only just started embedding existing metrics with CFOs and CEOs and people that have got purse strings. I think that we now know that like things like brand equity are really well understood, and like click-through rates and like CPAs and things like that are really well understood. I think some of the risk sometimes is that we invent new metrics that then become it seems like obfuscation. So I think certainly what we're trying to do with track is kind of demonstrate how these things all work together. So I don't think we've got traditionally very good metrics for tracking culture at all. Mainly because I don't think we've ever really tracked it. It's just got instincts a lot of the time for people.
Yeah, I think the default way that I have always done it in the past has always been to look at like brand love, or even just like an NPS score, where you're just like, okay, if people still love us, it means we're still relevant, and if we're still relevant, it means we're doing something that plays into their space. But it's too much of a shortcut, I think. So what I like about what we're building with Track in particular is we get lots of questions. Like, we get lots of questions internally about how are we tracking this? And again, as a brand, we don't have market mix models. We don't have the budgets for market mix models. So it's like, how do we look at the long-term success of all the brand building that we're doing, again, as a company that hasn't got an e-commerce or direct-to-consumer element? Like, we can't track the long-term effect of what we're doing in brand in the short term. So I think this is going to become a really important metric for us, even though it looks super simple. I think as long as we know that we're doing things positively in culture, that's the best we can ask for from a brand standpoint anyway.
I'm slightly conscious of time, so I will make a promise to everybody to come back to all of the questions that are in the chat. There's loads of them. Thank you very much for everybody coming with that. I'd like to say a huge thank you to you, Sarah, to the CultureLab team for putting this whole thing together, to Kendrick for his boot cuts, absolutely, and to all of you for joining us today. While CultureLab's only just started celebrating its first birthday, I've been dreaming of building like this product and this team and this company for decades, and highlighting the companies that are, building spaces for people to belong. And alongside launching a new magazine for people to discover new areas of culture, kind of feels like 13-year-old me paying a little bit more off my debt. To everybody out there, if you'd like to talk about Track, getting hold of a magazine or access to Discover, or if you're a brand and you'd like to chat about Navigate, please drop me a line. I'm Jed at culturelab.co. You can find Sarah on LinkedIn. I won't give your email address because that's a terrible idea. Thank you all for coming along, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.